I grew up in a world where every word was thought out for me. Every step, every look was part of a perfect picture. My name was Alice Cameron, a name that opened any door, except those that led to freedom. This is my story, about how I fell, about how I was betrayed, and about how I regained the right to call myself myself. If you are close to the theme of fighting for your destiny, if you want to hear a story of strength, love, and rebirth, subscribe to this channel, like it if your heart responds, and write a comment what you think about this story. My name is Alice Cameron. I am 27 years old. I grew up in a house where the walls were paneled with handmade wood, the floors were covered with Persian rugs, and dinners were held under the light of crystal chandeliers. We lived in a mansion on the Upper West Side, drove black limos, and talked as if a PR team was watching our every word. I didn't have a childhood in the traditional sense. Horseback riding lessons, ballet, French with a native speaker, tennis courts, and summer vacations in Switzerland. That's what my life looked like. My mother always said, "You have to be perfect, not for yourself, but for our family's reputation." And my father added, "You're not just a person. You're Cameron. That name is worth more than you think." When I turned 18, I was sent to Yale, not because I wanted to, but because it was required. Then came a job at a major investment bank. Long hours, gray suits, endless reports. I was good at it, very good. But every day, looking at my reflection in the window of my office on the 42nd floor, I asked myself, is this it? Sometimes I would go out to the park during my lunch break, sit on a bench and watch people. The way they laughed, the way they held paper cups of coffee, the way they hugged, without thinking about the fact that someone might see them from behind or take a photo for the newspapers. They were free. They didn't have to fit in. One day, I walked into a small cafe not far from the office. I forgot the name right away, but the smell of coffee and the music playing from an old record player stayed with me for a long time. It had the smell of home, which I had never had before. The owner, a woman in her 50s with a tattoo of a line of poetry on her wrist, recognized me, but didn't say a word. She just served me a cappuccino and cinnamon cookies, and for the first time in many years, I felt like myself. After that, I began to go there almost every day. I listened to the stories of other visitors, learned little by little, asked questions. One day, a woman said, "If you like being here, why don't you stay?" This question haunted me for several months, and then I did something that no one in my family expected. I quit my career. I took my personal savings, not the biggest, but enough to start something small. I decided to open my own cafe. My parents were shocked. Mom said I would disgrace the family. Dad, that I would break in a month. Neither of them supported me. Only cold judgment and a disdainful look. But I didn't give up. I found a place, chose the interior, hired the first team. I wanted to create a space where people could be themselves, without masks, without games. Just come, drink coffee, and feel the warmth. I called it Without Sugar because real life is not sweet from itself. You have to cook it yourself. The first few days were magical. People came, smiled, thanked me. I felt like I was finally doing something important, something real. But after 7 months, everything collapsed. The money was gone. The documents were fake. Lindsay, my best friend and business partner, suddenly disappeared. And then I realized this was no accident. Someone had planned it all, and now I had to pay the price for going against the rules. Instead of helping, my parents offered me marriage. I didn't know where to start. After the cafe went bankrupt, I was left alone, without money, without a dream, and without trust in those I considered close. Lindsay disappeared so suddenly as if she didn't exist. Her phone was disconnected, her apartment was empty, and the neighbors said that she left at night, quietly, almost unnoticed. I called, wrote, even went to the police, but there was no evidence, only the feeling of betrayal that burned inside. My parents, of course, did not fail to take advantage of the situation. They spoke with cold confidence as if it was only a matter of time. You see the consequences of your stupid decisions? Now you must understand that you need protection, support, someone who can guide you. And that's when they introduced him to me. Jake. He walked into the living room like a man who knew exactly his place in the world. Calm, a little dry, in a perfectly tailored suit. He didn't look rich, more like an ordinary mid-level lawyer, the kind of person my parents usually didn't even notice. But they approved of him, so he was dangerous. The conversation was short. Mom gave a speech that sounded more like an order. We agreed this will be a sham marriage. Protection for you, stability for him. No emotions, just a deal. Jake stood silently, not too interested, but not objecting either. There was no contempt in his eyes, only calm, as if he was playing his part too, just better at hiding it. When we were alone on the terrace after dinner, he said, "You didn't want this." "Did you?" I answered. He smiled faintly. "No, but sometimes life offers us partners when we least expect it." I didn't understand him then. I thought he was just being nice. But now I know. That was when everything that mattered began. The marriage was arranged quickly. Not a single wedding, not a single photo, just papers, a couple of signatures, and a new apartment. A gift from Jake. Not because he wanted to control me, but so that I would feel freer. "You deserve a space where no one will tell you how to breathe," he said then. For the first few weeks, we agreed on no obligations, no intimacy, just living under the same roof. He worked late, sometimes didn't come home at all. I was trying to sort out the cafe's affairs, collecting documents, trying to find traces of Lindsay. To no avail. But one evening, when I had almost lost hope, Jake came home and put a folder in front of me. Inside were scanned documents, financial reports, correspondence between companies that I had never seen before. "Something fishy here," he said, "and I think this is not just a business failure. Someone planned it all, very carefully, very professionally." I looked at him, not believing my eyes. "Why are you doing this?" He paused, then answered, "Because I don't believe in coincidences. And because for the first time, I met a person who is not afraid to fall, even if it hurts." At that moment, I realized Jake is not who he claims to be, and our marriage wasn't just a game our families had put on. It was just the first step into another life, one I hadn't even dreamed of. I never thought I'd be able to trust again, after everything that happened with Lindsay, with the cafe, with my parents. I learned to look over my shoulder, check every word twice, and not count on anyone but myself. But Jake was different, not because he talked beautifully or promised the stars. No, he just did it. Silently, systematically, as if he was used to solving problems without asking for anything in return. Every evening after work, he retired to Shufeng, a small room in the apartment that he had converted into his office. There was a single desk, 3 monitors, and a laptop that looked like a regular MacBook but clearly wasn't. A couple of times I noticed him closing tabs when I logged in, or quickly minimizing windows that were impossible to read because of the code. One day I asked, "What do you really do?" He looked at me for a long moment, not angrily, but as if he was deciding whether to answer. Then he said, "I help people find what they've lost. Sometimes it's data, sometimes it's truth, sometimes it's justice." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he was speaking in riddles. But soon I began to notice details. First, his name almost never appeared anywhere, not on social media, not in the databases of employees of the law firm where he officially worked. Second, the people around him behaved strangely. Colleagues from the office treated him with caution, as if they were afraid to say too much. And once, when we accidentally met one of them in a bar, he turned pale at the sight of Jake and immediately left. But the most unexpected thing happened when I found a folder on his computer. I wasn't looking for it specifically, I just wanted to listen to music while he was taking a shower. I opened my laptop, clicked on one of the folders to see if there was anything relevant, and saw the title: Project Black Coffee. Project Black Coffee. My heart sank. This was my case, my cafe. All the documents I didn't even know anyone could find. Financial correspondence, transfer logs, the name of the third partner I didn't even know about, and a list of companies associated with my parents. I couldn't breathe. I read the lines that confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't an accidental failure. This was a plan. Thoughtful, cold, cruel. When Jake came out of the bathroom, I was sitting with the laptop on my lap, white as a sheet. "You knew," I whispered. He wasn't surprised. He just closed the door and said quietly, "I started to suspect when I saw the first financial anomaly. Then I followed the chain. What they did to you, it wasn't just an attempt to bring you back into line. It was a war against your freedom. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was waiting for enough evidence to make you believe not only me but yourself." I didn't know what to feel. Anger, pain, gratitude. Everything was mixed up inside, as if someone had turned my whole life upside down. And in that moment, I realized two things. First, my parents were ready to break me by any means necessary. Second, Jake was much more than just a fictitious husband. He was the man who will help me become stronger. And then I said, "I want to reveal everything. Not now, but one day, in front of everyone, so that they can't hide behind money and influence." Jake smiled, sincerely for the first time without a mask. "Then we'll begin preparations," he said. "We have time, but when the moment comes, we'll strike with precision." And that's when I first felt a new me awakening inside. Not the one raised in the mansion, not the one they wanted to make perfect, but the real Alice Cameron. The one who knows how to do more than just fall. The one who knows how to get up. With each passing day, I felt myself changing. Not outwardly. That would be too easy. Inside, as if something new was awakening in my chest that hadn't existed before. Strength, perhaps, but it felt more like the awakening of truth. The truth that had been drowned out by other people's voices for so long. Jake became the mirror I began to look into without fear. He didn't try to change me, didn't demand that I be different. He was just there when I was having a hard time, and silent when I needed to think. Sometimes it seemed like he knew me better than I knew myself. But what struck me most was how he worked. I began to notice how he would disappear for days, sometimes even weeks. No word, no hint, no warning. He would just leave his keys on the table and disappear. And then he would come back as if nothing had happened. Only his eyes would become different, sharper, more intense. One evening, I asked him directly, "Where are you disappearing to?" He paused, standing by the window with his back to me. Then he answered, "I'm working on projects that can't be discussed out loud, not even with you, for now." "Is it about them?" I whispered. "About my parents?" He turned, slowly, his gaze hard but not cruel. Yes, and with people you don't even know about. I can't risk your safety, not now. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell him I had a right to know what I was getting myself into. But there was concern in his eyes, real and deep. Not for himself, for me. And then I realized Jake was doing something much bigger than just helping me figure out how to deal with the cafe. He was playing a game with higher stakes than I could have imagined, and I might have been a part of it for a long time. One night, I woke up to the sound of his voice. He spoke softly, almost a whisper, but his tone was tense. I stood up, walked barefoot to the living room, and saw him standing by the window, wearing only a shirt, holding his phone to his ear. Yeah, she can't know. Not yet. It's too dangerous. If they realize we're one step ahead, everything will collapse. I froze. My heart started pounding, as if it was trying to escape from my chest. Who are they? What will collapse? Then he said, "No, I won't let them touch her. She's not alone, and she never will be." I went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep anymore. I lay there, listening to every sound behind the wall, every breath, every step. For the first time in a long time, I felt afraid. Not for myself, for him. Who is he, really? A couple of days later, something happened that turned everything upside down. We were sitting in a cafe. Yes, an odd place to meet, but that's where Jake preferred to discuss important things. He said that it was easier to hear the truth in the noise. Suddenly, a man approached our table, tall, in a black coat, with a face that looked like it was carved out of stone. He placed the envelope in front of Jake and said briefly, "They know you're watching them." Then he left without saying goodbye. Jake didn't open the envelope right away. He just looked at it, then at me. "You better go," he said. "Now." "No," I said. "I'm not going to hide. Not from them, not from you. I want to know everything." He looked at me for a long time. Then he pulled out a piece of paper. One piece, no signature. Just 3 lines. "You've started playing a game that's not yours. You're not alone. It's ours." Jake's hands clenched into fists. He stood up, quickly paid for the coffee, and led me outside. "This isn't just business," he said. "This is family. My family is in this too. We have long-standing commitments, and if I do something wrong, they could hurt you." "Then do it right," I said, "because this is my fight now too." He started to protest, but I took his hand. "I'm not a girl who can be broken. I won't let them take control again, ever." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw more than determination in his eyes. I saw recognition, respect, and maybe even love. "Okay," he said, "then let's begin." And then I knew. This was just the beginning. But we weren't alone now. We were a team, and we were ready for war. I never thought the day would come when I'd be planning a war against my own family, but here it was. Or rather, weeks, months, quiet, deliberate, almost unnoticed by anyone but us. Jake and I began to work as a machine. He, with data, with figures, with people I had never even heard of. I, with facts, memories, documents that were preserved in my cafe archive. We collected information bit by bit, like building a house of glass, carefully so as not to destroy anything prematurely. He taught me to read between the lines, to understand who is really behind the signature on the contract, who is hiding behind the facade of charity and smiles. And I taught him one important thing, to see people, not just as pieces in a game, but as living souls, weaknesses, fears, hopes. It made us stronger together. One evening, sitting at the kitchen table, we found the last piece of the puzzle. There it is, Jake said, pointing to the laptop screen. That's your father. He is directly connected to the company that was withdrawing money from your cafe. And there is one more person. I glanced at the screen. My breath caught. It's Mom, I whispered. Jake nodded. They are both in this. This is not just an attempt to bring you back under control. It is a system. They do this to anyone who tries to get out from under their power. I felt cold. Even now, after everything, I still hoped that at least one of them loved me enough to stop. But no. Love in my family was conditional. Only if you did what they wanted. Only if you played by their rules. And then I knew. It was time to change the rules. They began to prepare for the public exposure. It had to be the perfect moment. With all eyes on my family, with reputations on the line. And such a chance presented itself faster than I expected. My parents' anniversary. 10 years of marriage together, which they decided to celebrate grandly. A banquet at one of the most elite hotels in New York, hundreds of guests, journalists, photographers, TV screens covering every detail. This is the perfect place, I told Jake. They will all be there, everyone who considers them saints. I have to tell the truth in front of everyone. It's dangerous, he said. They won't forgive such a betrayal. I'm not betraying you, I said. I'm free, and I want the whole world to see it. A few days before the event, I began to feel a strange tension, as if the air around me had become thicker. For the first time in a long time, I noticed how Jake had become more careful. He checked his phone for bugs, stopped using the same routes, started sleeping on one side of the bed so he could see the door. One night, he didn't come home. I waited until 2 a.m, then dialed his number. Beeps. Endless beeps. Then an answering machine. In the morning, he showed up at home. No explanation. He just walked in, closed the door, and hugged me. What happened? I asked. They know you're preparing for exposure, he said. They've started making moves. My heart sank. What do you mean? They tried to take me out. Tonight. But I was ready. His voice was calm, but his eyes were determined, cold, merciless. They made the first move, he continued. Now it's our turn. On the night of the anniversary party, I wore the black dress I'd chosen myself. No diamonds, no family jewels, just me. The Alice they'd created, and the one I'd found myself. When we walked into the room, all eyes turned to us. My parents were smiling as always, as if nothing had happened, as if they were a model family, not puppets pulling my strings. But tonight I was no longer a puppet. Tonight I would become a talking person. And when the music stopped, when the waiter poured champagne, and my father raised his glass, I stood up. Can I speak? I asked. Silence. My parents froze. My mother's smile began to crack. I looked around the room, at the people who had admired this family their entire lives, at those who came not for the celebration but for the opportunity to be close to power. And I spoke. You know me as the daughter of Richard and Elizabeth Cameron, but today I want to tell you about the other side of our family, the one they hid, about how they destroyed my cafe, about how they used my best friend to deceive me, about how they control people, manipulate, destroy those who do not obey. My voice trembled, but I did not stop. They made me weak. They thought that I would break, that I would retreat into the shadows, but today I am here to say I am no longer your plaything, and you can no longer hide behind your money and influence. The room froze. Someone was recording a video. Someone had already pulled out a phone to call the editors. My parents looked at me with an expression as if their world had just collapsed. And Jake stood next to me, didn't say a word, just held my hand. And I knew this was just the beginning. But now, the beginning of my story. I woke up with a strange feeling, as if something had changed, not in my life, but around it, as if the air had become different, thicker, filled with anticipation. A few days had passed since the anniversary evening, but the consequences were still unfolding like dark tides. The newspapers wrote about me. Someone called me a heroine, someone a traitor. Videos appeared on social networks where people shared their stories, how their families tried to control them, how society forced them to keep quiet. I didn't plan to be a symbol of anything, but now I realized I had become a voice for those who hadn't had one for a long time. Jake was sitting at the kitchen table when I came out of the bedroom. He was dressed in his usual attire, an untucked shirt, slightly wrinkled, and a worried look in his eyes. "What happened?" I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee. He looked up. "They've taken action." I froze. "Who?" "Your parents, and whoever's behind them. It's not just anger or hurt, it's a plan." He handed me the phone. The headline on the screen read, "Sugar-Free 2.0 Cafe Under Investigation. Suspected Financial Irregularities." My heart sank. "That's a lie." "Of course," he nodded. "But they know that reputations are destroyed faster than they are built." I sat down across from him. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Again. Again they wanted to take control. Again they thought they could make me disappear. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time in all this time, I felt not fear, but determination. What I should have done a long time ago, only this time, not for them, for myself. We began to work as a machine. Jake contacted people he trusted, lawyers, analysts, journalists. I collected facts, documents, correspondence. We had to not just protect the cafe, but strike first, prove that all this was a provocation, part of a larger game. And then we found her. In one of the bank files, deep in the system, hidden behind several layers of encryption, Jake found documents that changed everything. These were contracts between my parents and a private firm specializing in reputation management, including instructions on how to destroy my new business. "They planned this all out," he said, "even before you even started recovering." I stared at the screen, feeling a cold certainty growing inside me. Then it's time to show them I'm not a toy. And I never will be. A week later, we gave the information to one of the most influential journalists in the city. Not just the facts, but the whole story. With context, with evidence, with human pain. He agreed to write an article, but he asked, "If you do this, there will be a storm. Are you sure?" "Yes," we answered in unison. The article came out on Friday night. The headline, "The Secret Cameron Clan: How Wealth Was Turned into a Weapon." It went viral overnight. People commented, shared, wrote their stories. Politicians spoke out. Lawyers launched investigations. My mother refused to be interviewed. My father left town. And I stood in the cafe, among the cozy tables, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the music playing on an old record player, and understood. This is the end, but not mine. This was just the beginning of my present, and I was no longer going to let them write my story for me. I never thought that one day I would be able to say this with a smile. I am free. Not because I have no past, not because I did not need anything, but because I have been through everything, through betrayal, through fear, through pain, and I came out of it not broken, but strong. This morning, I woke up in my bed, in my and Jake's tiny apartment above the cafe. The sun was breaking through the curtains. Somewhere outside the window, birds were singing, and the first guests had already gathered downstairs. I stood up, put on my robe, went downstairs, and just breathed in the scent. Coffee, cinnamon, comfort. Cafe Sugar Free 2.0 became more than just a place. It became a symbol of starting over, that even if they tried to destroy you, you can create something new, something real. Jake was standing behind the counter pouring someone a cappuccino. Hearing my footsteps, he turned around and smiled, that rare smile that only belongs to me. "Good morning, Mrs. Cameron." I came closer, hugged him. "Call me Alice, just Alice." Because a name is not a title, it becomes yours only when you accept it consciously, when it stops being part of someone else's plan and becomes part of your story. My parents disappeared from the public space. They no longer needed parties, banquets, charity events. Their power crumbled like sand through my fingers. But I wasn't happy about it. I didn't want them to fall for revenge. I just chose to live differently. And in doing so, I destroyed their world. Lindsay never came back, but her letter is still in my desk drawer. Sometimes I pick it up and think, wherever you are now, I hope you found your way too. And Jake, he became my home, not because he was rich or powerful, but because he saw me, all of me, without masks, without games, just the real me. He didn't try to change me. He helped me find myself every day. Today, standing by the window and watching people enter my cafe, I understand one simple truth. Freedom is not the absence of rules. It is the ability to choose. Love is not a romantic word. It is when someone stays by your side, even when everything goes wrong. Life, it's not about conforming. It's about becoming yourself, the real you. I'm not afraid of making mistakes anymore, because now I know every mistake is another step towards who I want to be. And even though my path was not easy, he became mine. This is my story, and it's just beginning.